Hello, BookTube. Sorry for what I'm assuming is the slightly muddy audio and the slightly pixelated video, but we are dealing with a tech catastrophe here at Hyde Cottage, where virtually every better piece of technology that I have went belly up on me or refused to do this very thing, filming videos. So I'm using makeshift workarounds for now until I don't know until I have some better version of what I'm doing. I figure you don't come here for the cutting edge tech anyway. You come here for the books, the bean, and the sexy influencer. And I have all three in this video. I've got myself, of course. I've got the baby bean. There she is on her perch, looking out at her kingdom. I've also got a bunch of books. Because I went to the Brattle Bookshop. I went to the Brattle Bookshop for the first time in 2023. Most of 2023 was, until now, was either a fog of incomprehension on my part or pouring rain, which ruled out the Brattle. And for those of you who are new to this channel, you might be wondering, why does pouring rain rule out a used bookstore? It's because the Brattle, in addition to its 3 stories of used books, has a sale lot next door that's full of thousands more books that are open to the elements. $1, $3, and $5. No sorting or arranging any way other than that. So you can spend hours out there just looking at every book. And they're also cheap that you can just fill your arm. That's typically the yardstick that I use. I will start and fill my arm. And when I have the whole of that, any of you who have ever been booksellers will know, you have that little concave area there from the grip of your hand to the hook of your shoulder. That's about as much as I can comfortably carry. And once I've filled that space, then I quit. And I'm not out a lot of money when I do that. It's wonderful. So I waited for the weather to clear, and then when it did, I went. Now the weather has clouded up again. Now we had sunlight for a little while this morning for the first time in 2023. But it has now clouded up again. The light is becoming elusive here at Hyde Cottage once again. So I wanted to film this even though I'm using substandard tech. I still wanted to do that. So we'll just go through these books and see what we can find. I got a stack of them, as usual, because when your prices are low and your variety is high, your impulse control tends to go out the window. I got, for instance, the Library of America volume. These are lovely things, stately things. I have quite a few of them. I could always stand to have more, even though almost all the stuff that's in Library of America is also free as a digital download. And I have a lot of these things. But something about the book, when it's designed to look good, something about the book is nice. And my library is right now in a state of flux. I did an inventory at the end of 2023, so I know how many books I have. And I currently have 4 empty bookcases that are just sitting there, empty. I haven't gotten rid of them, but they have no books on them. So technically my print and paper library has room for expansion, but I don't really want it to expand. What I wanted to do is expand and contract, expand and contract, expand and contract, with every contraction flensing out the stuff I don't really want to keep. And every expansion adding things that are keepers. That's the whole goal, is always to find keepers. I found at least a couple of keepers today at the Brattle. And the Library of America volumes probably are keepers. They've got sewn binding, they've got acid-free pages. So they're going to last you a long time without yellowing or crisping or anything like that. Aren't they, Bean? Who's the baby? Oh. We went on a very long walk. She's probably a little bit peaked. I got a Library of America volume of James Fenimore Cooper, one of my favorite American writers. And this is their volume of Sea Tales for him. This is Red Rover and the Pilot. And this is what I mean. They've got the built-in cloth bookmark there, and they've got really, really nice sort of stay-open binding. It's just they're a wonderful product. They really are. They were intended to be that way. They were crafted to be volumes that you keep and pass on. I still kick myself years and years ago at a used bookstore in Boston that's no longer existed. Years and years ago, there was a used bookstore near a place where I went every week. And I used to pop in all the time. The guy behind the counter was funny and friendly. And Their stock changed fairly regularly. They had a bargain room that was patrolled by a disarmingly friendly cat. And one time they got in a whole Library of America, all of them that were extant up till that time, all in perfect condition. Somebody just unloaded a Library of America volume on them. They put them on shelves behind the register, and I asked the guy, I knew him, I knew the owner of the store, and I said, what kind of an offer could I make on that? And he said, well, I have to talk to the owner, and the owner found me in the bargain room the next time I was there and said, for you, I'll make a good offer on this. It'll be nice and fair. It'll be cheap. Because I want to move this, and I want to move it all as one set. And I like you. I've done business with you for a long, long time. And I didn't take him up on it, and it still bothers me. I should have. And I'm not in any way trying to amass a Library of America at all. Not in any way. But I wanted to have this one. Then this next one, it's a UK trade paperback. I guess that's the reason that I got it. I've tried this many times. I am reliably informed that it is major, that it is important, that I should like it more than I do. So maybe I'll give it another try. This is the Alexandria Quartet, Lawrence Durrell. I know that I'm supposed to like this author more than I do. This is a kind of a pretty trade paperback. It might be solid enough to take a reread. We shall see. We shall see. It's 4 volumes, 4 little novels. I read this, for the first time in a little mass market box set that some of you will remember. I think Mark Richardson has a copy of that box set. And it just didn't ever ignite for me. It just never did anything for me. I realized that it was sort of technically well done, but I kept comparing it to Olivia Manning, for instance, who wrote very similar books set in similar time periods with similar narrative points to prove that are, in my opinion, infinitely better. It's just infinitely better. If I'd come across a UK trade paperback of an Olivia Manning set, I'd have left this thing in the dust. This next one is a Penguin trade paperback. I don't quite know why I grabbed it. Well, it was $1. That's why I grabbed it. But I've read this a few times and I really enjoy it. But I never managed to hold on to it. And in this case, it's not because I'm giving it away to somebody, as is usually the case. In this case, it's that I just, time after time after time, decide that I will just resell it. That I don't like it enough to keep it. So I don't know why I keep getting a book that has that effect on me. But I did. I'll give it another reread. It's travel writing, and it's really good. This is Sarah Wheeler's book, Terra Incognita. Travels in Antarctica. You have the penguins trotting across Antarctica there. I wonder what Frida would make of a penguin. I don't know what she would make of a penguin. This is really, really... I don't mean to sound, weak or non-committal about it. It's really good travel writing. I don't know why I haven't kept a volume all this time. Maybe I was waiting for a hardcover, although I like this trade paperback better than any hardcover. The only problem with this one is that the spine is sun-faded, so that it isn't really visible. But that's okay. I know what it is. Let's see here. What else are we going to do? Should we do the other paperback? Let's do the other paper. The other paperback was a bit of a find and a sure keeper. Something that is going to go in the... Not only is it a keeper, it's going to go in the little book room. I'm going to make room for it after a bit of rereading. This is a great big anthology from W.W. Norton, Just Enough Jeeves. This is P.G. Wodehouse, his great stories of a young, over-moneyed fop named Bertie Wooster, and his valet, his gentleman's gentleman, his Jeeves, who is omniscient, and who gets him and his friends out of one scrape after another. This is a nice, big collection with the French flaps and all. It's got an introduction by Robert McCrum, who did a pretty entertaining biography of Wodehouse. I think, was McCrum also the one who was responsible for that big collection of Wodehouse, A Life in Letters? I don't remember if he was or not. I think I reviewed the biography, and I'm pretty sure I reviewed The Life in Letters. I'll try to remember to leave a link to any of those reviews down below. This has 3 collections, one novel and 2 short story collections. What does this have in here? Just Enough Jeeves. Joy in the Morning, Very Good Jeeves, and Right Ho Jeeves. I just a couple of years ago reread Joy in the Morning. I probably end up doing it again. I love this, and I have my little book room has a whole bunch of Wodehouse anthologies. I've got one of those old Avenel hardcovers with I think 5 Wodehouse novels. Typically in anthologies, you get Jeeves and Wooster, but you also get P. Smith or Blanding's Castle or something like that. And this doesn't do that. A lot of the anthologies I have in the little book room do. I wasn't going to pass this up. This is just delightful. It's got blurbs on the back from Ben Schott, Evelyn Waugh, and Christopher Hitchens. So that was a find of the day. But this next, all the rest are hardcovers, and this next one could also be a bit of a find. I mean, this is just the sort of thing that I love. This is To Criticize the Critic, a collection of nonfiction occasional pieces by T.S. Eliot, including his essay called To Criticize a Critic. Although there's another thing, if I remember correctly, in here that is his essay on Dante. He wrote a lot on Dante, but he wrote one particular essay that was incredibly personal, just ultimately moving. I'm hoping that I remember that's in here. Yeah, to criticize the critic is for yes, from 1950. What Dante Means to Me is in here. I know that this will be heresy for a lot of you dude bros out there, but I like Eliot more when he's writing nonfiction than when he's writing poetry. I just recently reread The Wasteland. I got a Norton Critical, one of the new Norton Critical editions is their edition of The Wasteland. This is a joy, and I have a whole collection. I have an ever-growing collection now, an unwieldily large collection of books about writing, essays, and that sort of thing. That really is, it has wildly outgrown the space that I gave to it. And I said the other day, I made a video and I said the other day that there really isn't any other space for it. There isn't any other contiguous space that is bigger. And a couple of you emailed me. I leave my email on every video. We're off to a new year here. There are going to be plenty of people who are new to the channel. I leave my email on every video. That is not a junk email. That is not a merch store. That is not a secondary email that I check once a month. That's my inbox. Feel free to email me about anything at any time. I have the honor to be emailed by a number of you all the time about family problems or gripes about work or questions about school or questions about books or whatnot. I'm perfectly, as long as you are understanding, and almost all of you have been wonderfully so, that I am a working writer, so I might not be able to fire off a response right away. I certainly won't be able to fire off a 5,000 word response, and I probably won't read a 5,000 word email. But if you want a correspondence, I'm absolutely happy to oblige. And I mentioned the other day that the bookcase of books about books and collections of reviews and collections of occasional work is overgrown, and there's no space for it, that is any bigger to where those books can go. And a number of you pointed out that I could renovate the little book room. That bookcase is not in the little book room. It used to be. It outgrew the one space in there. A number of you said, why don't you just clear off 3 whole bookcases in the little book room, put those books there, and put all these books in there? I thought about that, but I use those books. The books of collected book reviews and book essays, prefaces, that sort of thing. I use them. I go to that bookcase and pull those down and use them. What do I remember so-and-so said about this? What was a great turn of phrase about this author? Where have critics been over the last 100 years on this particular strain of writing? I go to that bookcase and stand there and use it. And I do a lot of work here on the fainting couch with the bean. Well, baby. I do a lot of work here on the fainting couch, that would mean that the little book room is a longer trip. Such a snowflake. Anyway, this is going to go on that pile. I do need to address that pile sometime in 2023, because right now half of it is double stacked, and that doesn't do you any good at all. That doesn't do any good at all. So I need to figure that out. I will figure that out. There is another possibility, but I need to sort of take a tape measure and figure out shelf space. And this next one is a classic. At the end of 2022, you never make plans for what you want at the Brattle. You never make demands on the Brattle sale lot. That's a bad idea. But I had a yen for a lot of those final visits of the year to find hefty stuff, to find works, canonical works that I could put in the little book room, that I could revisit over and over again. That was in part the end of the year talking, because those are my oldest friends. I have revisited them so many times. I know that they can stand a pounding. They're not vulnerable to the vagaries of new books. Then the end of the year happened, and that yen sort of went away. But there is a vestige of it that remained, so that when I found a classic, I grabbed it. It was this. I found The Golden Ass by Apuleius. This is a wonderful old. This is like 100 years old. This particular version. Let's see what we have here. Okay, well, this doesn't have a date on it, but nevertheless I know that it is probably about 100 years old, and this is illustrated. Let me get you an illustration. The problem is that this is deckled edges, and they are badly. A lot of this book, the pages aren't cut, so whoever got this read a chapter and then abandoned it. So I'll need to. Actually, you can see, if you look at the spine, you can see these are cut pages, and these are not. So that's as far as the original owner got 100 years ago. I'm going to go through with a knife and cut the rest of these pages. This is an example of the artworks. This is not. Boissatier did famous illustrations for The Golden Ass, and this is not that. It's meant to look similar, I think. These illustrations are by Philip Hagreen. No idea who he is. And this is the William Adlington translation, which is a classic in its own right. It's from the Elizabethan era. It's the work is from the 2nd century, but this translation is very, very good. It's absolutely wonderful. It doesn't do all the things that a translation would do today. It isn't as literal as it's got more delicacy to look at, and the author, the translator, is perfectly happy to interpolate his own flights of rhetorical fancy in whenever he thinks it's appropriate. Nowadays, translation philosophy says it's never appropriate. Once upon a time, it was. Certainly in the Elizabethan age, it was. And we don't know much about Adlington. We know him from this translation, and only a bare amount of other stuff. Almost nothing. But what a monument. And what a pretty thing. I don't have the Penguin Classic of The Golden Ass, which I think is a translation by Robert Graves, but I don't have a big, beautiful thing like this. That section of my personal library for weird, interesting editions of classical canonical work, that section is also growing. A lot. All of those are in the little book room right now, and they are growing a lot. So I'm going to need to rearrange a lot in 2023. And as usual, the key to rearranging books on your shelves, especially when you're dealing with thousands of them, is to get rid of a huge chunk of them first. I'm not so sure that I will need to do that. Usually that has been my calculus, because that frees up space. And that gives you that breaks the logjam and allows you to move things around. But I have free space. I have three or four empty bookcases. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'll take you along along the way. Then this next one, oh my, another find. The type of thing you see at the Brattle for $1 that you're not going to see anywhere else at any price. This is when did this come out? You will certainly have a date. You will certainly behave yourself. Yes, 1924. This is Memoirs of an Editor by Edward Mitchell, who led a fascinating life. I wish there were a biography of Mitchell, but as far as I know, there isn't one, which is kind of amazing. He was a writer, also an editor, and he worked professionally in journalism. He actually got his start here in Boston at the great old Daily Advertiser with I think it was the Daily Advertiser with Richard Henry Dana. No, with Edward Everett Hale as his editor. And Edward Everett Hale taught him a lot of stuff, not only about the newspaper craft, but also about writing. I think Mitchell was from Maine, but he has fantastic stories to tell as an editor. Oh, there we go. There's our author himself, late in life. That picture doesn't do justice to what he looked like when he was a young man at Harvard. There's the frontispiece there. I wonder if this book would be the only place in the world where you would have any likelihood of pictures of this person. The only way in the world. This is the only place in the world where you would ever find that. Wow. Okay. He lived through tumultuous periods. He knew all of the presidents. I'm sure that this book will have a story he used to dine out on about attending a White House dinner with William Howard Taft, with President Taft. Yeah, okay, there we go. That is what our author looked like as a young man. And that picture is a little bit haunting because this author, Mitchell, had a weird thing happen to him. Accounts varied. If there were a biography, I imagine the biographer would get to the heart of it. But he had a weird thing happen to him where one of his eyes was struck with a hot cinder and destroyed. And there's a thing that happens to your eyes, that sympathetic blindness, where it happened to my own brother, where if you have a trauma to one eye, sometimes the other eye will give up the ghost. Will just stop working. Because I guess the physiological explanation is because human sight is so fundamentally binocular. But the weird thing about Mitchell is that the eye that was originally damaged recovered, but the eye that went blind sympathetically did not. There was nothing structurally wrong with it, but it stayed blind. So he wasn't completely blind in his life, and what a life he led. Oh my, what a life he led. What a life it would be to write. This is the closest I think that I will ever come to a biography of this guy, whose writing is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I used to, once upon a time, a long time ago, there used to be an informal group of people who met in the back room of an old used bookstore here in Boston every day, usually every day. Whoever was in town, whoever wanted to chat or schmooze or maybe make a good deal on some dumb old book they wanted to sell or whatnot. And authors quickly got wind of this, and whenever they were coming through Boston, they would end up back in that room, and I had an open invitation, a standing invitation to that back room. So I was back there often, and I heard many a science fiction author back then say, when I would just naively talk about H.G. Wells as sort of the ideological founder of modern science fiction, or Edgar Rice Burroughs, or whatever, a lot of them would bring up Mitchell. A lot of them would. As somebody who came up with all of these science fiction ideas long before anybody else did. For reasons that surpass anyone's understanding. For reasons that no one really does understand, except maybe that it came from Edward Everett Hale, who was, if you go into Boston's Public Garden, you will see a gigantic statue to Everett Hale, and you'll look at him and you'll think, okay, well, there you go, that's your quintessential 19th century Boston Brahmin man of letters, big heavy coat, gigantic beard, forbidding experience, that sort of thing. But Hale wasn't like that, and he was an amazingly inventive thinker. We know him now. If we know him for anything, we know him now for The Man Without a Country. The story of The Man Without a Country, which even now, that is not taught anymore. So we might not know Edward Everett Hale at all anymore. And now that I think about it, the same thing probably applies to Mitchell as well, because when he went, he had he cut his teeth in Boston with Boston journalism. But then he moved on, and eventually he was at The Sun in New York City, which was at the time the biggest paper in the country. Think of the New York Times now. He was their guy. He was their poobah, their editor-in-chief. I wanted to get to the frontispiece again here because otherwise you're just looking at a boring spine. But yeah, there we go. The irony here for this guy, after a lifetime of being an editor and commissioning people, knowing all sorts of people, is that you don't know his name, but you will probably know The Sun for one inconsequential detail. At the end of his life, Edward Everett Hale would have told you that The Man Without a Country was an inconsequential detail of his writing career, and yet it's the only thing he was ever known for, and now the only chance he has of being known is that you might have heard of that story. And the same thing is true with Mitchell as editor of The Sun, only it's even more trivial. He would have howled at the idea, because it was when he was editor of The Sun that somebody wrote in, a little girl allegedly wrote in a letter asking if there was a Santa Claus. And somebody at the Sun wrote, "Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus that's famous." When all of this pomp and circumstance has disappeared. Oh, good Lord. Wow, there's Charles Dana. Wow, that was an eminence grease. Oh, incredible. As an old man. Well, anyway, as you can tell from me effusing here, this is a Steve book just right down the line. This is the kind of thing that even the kids at the Brattle refer to it as a Steve book. This is the sort of thing where I have a whole shelf of them. These old memoirs of old faded men of letters who are long gone and long forgotten. I don't think Mitchell's ever had a biography. I'm not sure. That probably there's been some doctoral dissertation somewhere or other on the effect he had on science fiction as a genre, but mostly not. Mostly he's forgotten, like Edward Everett Hale, like Charles Dana, or all the Dana family, like all the Lowells. I am the one who remembers them, so I am the only person who was going to see this on a cart at the Brattle and say, "Ooh," squeal and grab it. So I did. Anyway, this next one is one that I've had before. Got it as a hardcover when it first came out, which was when? 1997. I got it as a hardcover in 1997. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I got rid of it for some reason. And then it came out as a paperback, a trade paperback, years later, and I thought the trade paperback was ugly and cheap. So I didn't get the trade paperback, and I've never had it since. I found it today, so I will reread it. I will keep it and reread it. It's Sebastian de Grazia, who wrote a great book that I think he won a Pulitzer Prize for his book called Machiavelli in Hell. His biography called Machiavelli in Hell, which is amazing. It's amazingly good. Totally different than you would expect a biography of anybody to be, in the way that it reads, in the way that it moves. Totally different. An amazing experience to read. And he wrote a book, this book, A Country with No Name. A weird book, totally different from Machiavelli in Hell. A work of history that nevertheless has a metafictional setup to it of a pretty but forbidding teacher sort of one-on-one tutoring a horny but barely under control young man about the history of America. And the history of America as it's presented in this book is absolutely eye-opening. It is astonishingly thought-provoking. For in starting with the very title of the book, where the teacher in de Grazia's book points out that in the founding documents of the United States of America, the United States of America is an adjectival phrase describing something that it does not name. It doesn't actually name what the name of the country is that is composed of the United States of America. It doesn't. The United States in General Congress assembled do not have a heading under a name. The teacher in this book, and by extension de Grazia, also points out that the Constitution of the United States is a legal document, and the way it's drawn up means that it applies only to the signatories, or at least to the people alive at the time, and that certainly it is not a valid document anymore. And it goes on and on from there. All the great figures in American history are brought in here and written about, talked about, interpreted in totally amazing ways. Just whether you agree with it or not, it's such an amazingly sinus-clearing reading experience. I was very happy to find it. This was the exact shape of the hardcover that I had. I thought I'd never see it again, so I was very happy to get it at the Brattle. It is a keeper. It is not a little bookworm keeper. Memoirs of an Editor will go on. I have one particular shelf that is just book after book after book of 100-year-old memoirs of faded, gone men of letters. I'll put this there when I'm done reading it. The Golden Ass will definitely go in the little book room. The Wodehouse will definitely go in the little book room. The Eliot will go on the bookcase of critics and book reviews and prefaces and whatnot. This will go out here in the history section. This is not it. I'm glad that I found it, but it's not a little book room purchase. I don't think we have any other little book room purchases. And then this next one, this was exorbitant. It was $1, so I didn't hesitate. But I think I have an e-copy of this, and I wasn't impressed with it the first time that I read it. I got it anyway because this is just so pretty. When did this come out? 2012. So before we were talking to each other, I got this and read it. This is C.J. Sansom, who's famous for the Matthew Shardlake novels. This is a beautiful thing. Somebody put a plastic covering on this. This edition, I cannot be an American. This edition has a built-in cloth bookmark. Everything I don't know. Do any of you know what that colophon means? What is that? Is this a book club edition? I always envy Mark and Jason can know that just by looking at something. I've never got the knack for that. Oh no, this was published in 2012 by Mantle, which, if I remember correctly, is the UK Macmillan. So this is a UK hardcover, I bet. But this is a typical thing, a typical little subgenre. What if the Nazis had won the war? And it's atmospheric. It's got well-drawn, three-dimensional characters, the way you get in the Shardlake novels. But it didn't really work for me the one and only time that I read it. And I saw it at the Brattle, and I thought, you're reaching your carrying capacity, but you're not there yet. Why don't you give this another try? Especially since I'm never going to find it prettier than this, with a plastic covering on it and everything. So I grabbed it. The lugging of these things home was the main freight, so I was willing to do it. And then the last book that we'll have here before we attempt a Steve Pyramid was also a find, a really good find. I love this sort of thing. This, I think, is also a UK hardcover. Yeah, Sutton Publishing. And this came out in 2002. I never saw it in 2002. I'd be willing to bet this never had an American publication. This is by Jonathan Hughes, and it's called Arthurian Myths and Alchemy. It's a study of the kingship of Edward IV. And there he is right there. There's Edward IV. I have two big biographies of Edward IV, but this is different than that. This is a study of aspects of his kingship, aspects of his personality, his faith, even his literacy. And I love kingship studies like this. It isn't often that I see them. Usually I see big full-dress biographies, that sort of thing. But I love to get down into the weeds with things like this. Absolutely love it. And Edward IV is fascinating. So I grabbed this. I was overjoyed to find it. This is all the rest of these things I could see. Maybe I would see at the Brattle again. Maybe not the Mitchell. And maybe not that particular Golden Ass. But this thing? No, I grabbed it right away. It's a serious work of history that will nevertheless end up on the, not on the history shelf, but on I have a whole bookcase of royal biographies. I bet there'll be enough biography in here to warrant going there. Oh, baby, are you licking? Stop licking, baby girl. Stop licking, baby girl. She gets into that habit where she just sleepily licks. She's not even really awake. She just sleepily licks. She's very tired. I walked my bean a little too much today. But anyway, there we go. So that is a study of the kingship of Edward IV. Fantastic. For me, anyway. There are a lot of books on this list that I'm saying fantastic to that no one would be interested in. But I'm going to eat this up. So there we have it. We have Arthurian Myths and Alchemy. We have Dominion by C.J. Sansom. We have A Country with No Name, Sebastian de Grazia. Very happy to find that. We have The Memoirs of an Editor by Ed Mitchell. We have The Golden Ass by Apuleius in the Adlington translation with the illustrations. We have To Criticize the Critic and Other Essays by T.S. Eliot. I will read To Criticize the Critic again, and I will also read his essay on Dante again before I put this on the shelf. We have Just Enough Jeeves, a big fat anthology with French flaps. Very nice. We have Terra Incognita by Sarah Wheeler. Multiple buys on this one. Maybe I'll hold on to this one. We have The Alexandria Quartet by Lawrence Durrell. I imagine some of you really like it. Probably some of you like it a lot more than I do. And finally, the Sea Tales of Fenimore Cooper. Not all of his Sea Tales, but two of them, the more popular ones, for Library of America, which will go with my... it'll go on my shelf of Library of America volumes once I'm done. I'll probably read the pilot over again. But there you go. That is a nice long book haul in a video that is also a test. I'm pretty sure that this is acceptable. It's probably not great, but it's probably acceptable as a patchwork until I can figure out what to do with filming. I hope so. I hope you can hear me and see me even if the sound is muffled or tinny and the visuals are maybe a little pixelated. I'm hoping so. We might even have to do a Steve stream on this machine. Oh my. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.